Hi. This is going to be one of those tough love type of videos, okay? I have a bone to pick with some of you, so buckle up. One of the most irritating questions that I get under my videos is, who are they? You've probably seen this question float around the internet whenever someone says something rather ambiguous about a current event. For example, one of my live streams actually for both Charlie Kirk and the would-be assassination of Donald Trump, I put in the title of the video, they tried to shoot Trump. They shot Charlie Kirk. And the comments without fail are always, who are they? And I imagine people are asking this question because they hear they and us, and they think it's like divisive rhetoric and that I am othering the radical left. The assumption that I'm talking about the left is so narrow and myopic to what the bigger picture is. And so I'm going to dissect this question really quickly because, quite frankly, I'm tired of seeing it. I honestly, it's one of those irritating things that every time I come across this question, I just want to shake the person because they don't get it, okay? So let's start with this question. Who are they? If I had their exact names, which I don't, it would take me days upon days to explain who these people are, okay? When I say they, I'm talking about people who have decided, who have taken it upon themselves to control you and me, all right? Again, I don't have their names. I would love to have all of their names, but the list is too damn big, all right? And so the reason why I stick to saying they is because they sound a lot more palatable than saying Marxist globalists who want to take over the world. Okay. If I were to say that, I imagine these people who ask me this question are going to look at me like, she needs a tinfoil hat because she sounds like one of them conspiracy theorists, which is part of the point. The whole notion that there is a group of people who want to take over the world sounds kind of crazy, right? Yeah, until you do your research. And so I would suggest to you people who are asking this question, who are they, to dig a little bit deeper. All right, just a little bit, because I would imagine if you're asking this question, you have never heard of Agenda 2030, have you? Of course you haven't. I know that you haven't. And so I'm going to tell you what Agenda 2030 is. It's basically a group of people who have for years been orchestrating this agenda to turn the world into a one world government. All right, I'm going to make it easier for you guys. Here we have ChatGPT, and I'm going to type in, what is the real agenda behind UN Agenda, Agenda 2030. Can't type. Use up to 100 words. Okay. UN Agenda 2030 presents itself as a global plan to eliminate poverty, protect the environment, and promote equality through the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. This sounds great. Wow, this sounds so good. How could we ever say no to eliminating poverty? Well, let's read on. Critics argue its underlying agenda is to centralize global governance, impose regulatory control over national economies, and reshape societies under a uniform framework that prioritizes globalist policies over national sovereignty by promoting uniform standards. In areas like climate, education, and healthcare, some see it as a tool to influence individual freedoms, economic systems, and cultural norms, steering the world towards a model of centralized planning and dependency rather than local autonomy. Okay? So again, sounds great in principle. Wow, eliminating poverty? That sounds so noble. Yeah, that's how they're marketing it. But anyone who can use their brain and can look at their goals, and here I'm going to show you just so no one says that ChatGPT doesn't know what it's talking about. This is directly from the United Nations website, and you can read their goals right here. Again, on surface level, it sounds good. It sounds very noble, but ideas have consequences, and they are implementing this at the expense of national sovereignty, at the expense of personal autonomy. Look right here. It says that they want to promote a uniform standard. What do they mean by that? They mean collectivism. We're going to redo this one more time so you guys can get a different version. Okay, the real agenda behind UN Agenda 2030 is officially framed as promoting global sustainability, reducing poverty, and protecting environment through 17 sustainable development goals. Critics argue it also seeks to centralize global governance, influence national policies, and reshape economies under a framework that prioritizes environmental and social engineering. Pay attention to that. Why do you want to know why there's a lot of people in the United States are off their rocker all of a sudden, and they're adopting a lot of these nonsensical ideas? It's because of this. We are being conditioned to not only depopulate ourselves by means of quote unquote trans affirming care, abortion, things of that nature, but we're also being conditioned to adopt policies and beliefs that are more in line with a socialist agenda. As a matter of fact, while we're still here on ChatGPT, I'm going to ask it a few more questions. Is UN Agenda 2030 more in line with the American right or left? One word answer. Left. Okay. Are both the American American left and Agenda 2030 in favor of expanding the government? One word answer. Yes. Okay. Let me see another question. Yeah. Are both in favor of censorship? One word answer. Yes. Are both in favor of increased surveillance? Damn it. Are both in favor of open borders? One word answer. Why do you think the United States, as well as other places around the world, whether it be the UK or Australia, why do you think all of these places simultaneously have been dealing with the same things North America has been dealing with? Why do you think every major place in the world has a border crisis? Why do you think all of a sudden there's lots of military-aged men pouring into the country? Why do you think Islam is growing rapidly in some areas of the world that, historically speaking, were not Islamic? Do you think that's a coincidence? Why do you think during COVID, all of the methods that we were doing to flatten the curve were universal? And for some reason, these methods didn't actually help flatten the curve. If anything, it was almost like a compliance test to see how obedient we would be to the authority figures. Why do you think everyone seems to be on the same page? It's because it's orchestrated. That's why. It's orchestrated. Now, for those of you who are caught up to speed and you recognize that, yeah, there are people in this world that want to do us harm, you might be wondering, how do we fix this? How do we undo what they have already started? And how do I say this? I don't want to say you don't, because that sounds very pessimistic. But I think it's an underestimation of how long they have been planning this. Okay. So what I would recommend, and it's what I always recommend to people, is to start at the basics. You need to know what their plan is and how and what tactics they're using to see this plan to fruition. So I would always recommend starting with reading a book There's a book called The Naked Communist, and it illustrates 45 steps that communists use to take over America. And I say America, okay, the United States, because if you notice, if you were to compare how bad things are in, let's say, the UK or Australia, for example, it's exacerbated more so than what's happening in the United States, and that's because we have this thing called you might have heard of it, the Constitution. Yeah, more specifically, we have this thing called the First and Second Amendment. But now, if you notice, every time there is some type of a tragedy, certain individuals, mainly politicians in the media, will jump on this narrative of we need more gun control and we need to criminalize people for hate speech. It is their way of subvertly chipping away at these protections that we have, because once you can't speak and once you can't defend yourself, they can do whatever they want to you. If you need a reference point, just look at what's happening in other parts of the world, okay? But again, I recommend starting by reading The Naked Communist. The updated version, by the way, I think is really helpful. I'll put a graphic for you on the screen. And you know what? I might have to actually read this book out loud and make it into a video, because I have been recommending it for years. And some people take up that, that task, and they take initiative and they inform themselves. And other people just want to live in the land of Delulu and think that, oh, everything that's happening in America is just politics. Okay, well, keep telling yourself that, all right? Wake me up when you're ready to listen. I'll be right here. But yeah, so that's all I really wanted to talk about for this video. Was more so of a rant, because like I said, it drives me nuts that after all we have seen since 2020, and by the way, this is before 2020, that this has all been, that they have been orchestrating this. But I woke up in 2020 and I was made aware of what they had been doing for years prior. But it's so crazy to me that even after we've seen all of this stuff happen in our society, people still want to play the, oh, who's they? I'm like, wake up, snap out of it. All right. You're still in the Matrix. Hello. All right. That's going to be it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, or if you disagree with me, I don't care. But go ahead and leave me a comment in the comment section below. And if you have a suggestion for something else you want me to touch on, let me know as well. My name is Vanessa. You may know me as Gothix, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.